relevant information. And of course, it behooves the griever to provide us all relevant information also to, if they want us to consider their grievance fully.
Okay. Well, staying with this, thank you for that. Staying with this theme of data and information, it was brought up at a previous committee meeting on this topic, on this study, that we live in the modern era, and the preponderance of data that comes with that is pretty vast. Whereas a grievance might have involved walking down a hallway in 1980 and opening some file drawers and finding some papers. Now there's a great deal of searching for electronic records and so forth. Do you think that the preponderance of electronic information and data is linked in any way, even in the smallest of ways, to the length of time, the timelines that we're talking about now to fulfill the request for information?
In fact, for us, I think it speeds it up because the search for us is a little bit more efficient than having to look through all the paper files to find the information, and how we can store it and access it also within the committee is enhanced by having it electronically.
Anything from your office?
No, I think searching through paper boxes and boxes of paper files was a pretty inefficient way of finding information. With our investigations, typically the issue is sometimes it's time issues in getting the information from the department. They have to search through the information. Sometimes it's an issue of getting the information from the complainant too, as well. Hard to get a hold of them and things like that. So it's on both sides.
Okay. So I'm thinking a lot about the infrastructure with which the federal government moves data, moves information. I mean, we know that there's a lot of information out there, records that need to be accessed, and sometimes I wonder if we overlook the train tracks that this information has to move on. And I wonder if you have any, thinking about it maybe through a lens of modernization of systems, any reflections on that as it pertains to your work?
Well, certainly as I said, we need to update and modernize our IT system, just as any IT system needs to be updated over time. The department in our case has zero access to the information we store in our IT servers. That's really important for the confidentiality principle that we work under, but it does need to be modernized, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Maybe moving on from that 1 minute, just, well, it's hard to fit this in, but for you, Mr. Ombudsman, what is the greatest way that the ATIP process impacts your work? The ATIP process, which we follow the law in essence, so we don't get as many ATIPs as the whole department gets, absolutely not. But we follow the law. We're very, very good at getting the information for an ATIP request. We're actually pretty good. Type of thing. So it doesn't truly affect us. It does change year to year, though. So we never know from year to year how many requests we might get. And so we do have a contract, professional service contract in place, as sort of like a retainer, that if we need to have additional resources for that big year, then we will access it too as well. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fillmore and Mr. Lick and Mr. Josie and Madame Hines. I want to thank you on behalf of the committee. Your contributions to our study is quite valuable, I'm sure. With that, we'll suspend and re-empanel. Meeting suspended. pretty good. This is for our second hour. We have Carolyn Menard, Information Commissioner, Alison Knight, Senior Director of Investigations, Priority Cases, Historical and Intelligence, Office of the Information Commissioner. Priority Cases, well, that's quite a long title. Yeah. And Harriet Soloway, Public Sector Integrity Commissioner, and Brian Radford, General Counsel. So welcome all to the committee, and I'll just ask you to go with your first 5 minutes in sequence. So Ms. Menard, 5 minutes, please.
Merci beaucoup. Je vous remercie de m'avoir. Thank you for inviting me to speak to this committee. Since this is my first appearance before your committee, I would like to give you an overview of my mandate as Canada's Information Commissioner. To understand my mandate, it's important to recognize that I am an independent agent of Parliament whose role is defined under the Access to Information Act. The Information Act provides a right of access to information in accordance with the following principles: that government information should be made available to the public, that necessary exceptions to the right of access should be limited and specific, and that decisions on disclosure of government information should be reviewed independently of government. The Treasury Board Secretariat holds the overall responsibility of administrating the Act. This includes providing guidance and tools to government institutions. Access to information requests can be made for any records under the control of a government institution. About 260 institutions are subject to the Act, including the Department of National Defense. Les institutions sont tenues de répondre aux. Each institution is responsible for responding to the access to information requests it receives. My role as Information Commissioner is to investigate complaints relating to those requests. Complaints are submitted to my office when requesters are not satisfied with the amount of time that it is taking for an institution to respond, or if they believe that they have not received all of the information to which they are entitled. So far, this current fiscal year, I have registered 103 complaints against the Department of National Defense. As of today, the department ranks 6th in terms of the number of complaints received by my office. At the conclusion of an investigation, I have the power to issue an order against the institution, including ordering the disclosure of information to the requesters. My orders are legally binding. When institutions receive an order, they must implement the order unless they apply to the federal court for a review. This year, I have issued orders in 29 investigations against the Department of National Defense, mainly on timeliness of responses to access requests. In several of these investigations, I found that it was a lack of responsiveness from teams responsible for providing records that affected the department's ability to meet its obligation under the Act. Comme je l'ai souvent souligné dans des déclarations. As I have often noted in statements on the importance of transparency within the federal government, senior leadership, that is key to influencing corporate culture change. This leadership must extend to information management practices and internal communications protocols in order to ensure compliance with the Act. Give you an update on recent investigations I concluded against the Department of National Defense. Last June, I ordered the Minister of National Defense to release records on its COVID-19 policies by November 30th, 2023. These policies were requested through an access to information request made the year before. The department told my office it would comply with the order. However, it did not meet the November deadline. This is why last December, I filed an application for a writ of mandamus to compel the Minister of National Defense to comply with my order.
This was the second time I had to make this type of application as a result of an institution ignoring my orders. Last week, I filed 2 new applications to compel the Minister of National Defense to comply with orders that should have been respected in November and December of 2023. These files are currently ongoing with the federal court. As such, I cannot discuss the particulars of these proceedings. However, I can tell you that this type of extraordinary recourse to compel an institution to respect orders should not be required. It raises doubts about my authority and, more importantly,